Guys, this week AMD's value skyrocketed because it announced a major partnership, a big deal with OpenAI. Today's video is about that, but before we get into it, I want to share XTB's new campaign for people who haven't signed up yet. It's the broker I use. If you watch my channel, you already know that. I'm leaving the QR code here so you can sign up, and I'll also put the link in the description. When you register with XTB and of course complete all the steps, which only take a few minutes and are necessary to ensure everything is secure, once you transfer money to XTB, you receive a stock. And this time, the stock is an Intel share. It's a company I've talked about a lot here, and I hope it continues to grow. It has the potential for that. It's one of the most talked about companies right now and has grown tremendously. So, it seems to me like an excellent opportunity for you to sign up with a broker that is regulated in Portugal, and there are not many that are regulated in Portugal. It's transparent, your money is safe up to 20,000 euros, the registration process is very quick, and you even get an Intel share, which I hope will appreciate in value over time. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank you for your support. And just to be clear, this is not financial advice. Please do your own research. Today, I'm going to share my opinion about AMD. Let's get to it, guys. What happened this week was the announcement of what could be one of the biggest deals, one of the biggest partnerships, one of the biggest announcements in the history of artificial intelligence. Goodbye. AMD and OpenAI, two giants. OpenAI is at the forefront when it comes to generative artificial intelligence, so to speak, and AMD is trying to build a narrative and gain the market's trust to become a second NVIDIA, so to speak. Right now, NVIDIA holds over 90% of all chips in the world for data centers for artificial intelligence. AMD wants to gain a bigger share because the market is going to grow a lot, and if AMD manages to increase its percentage even a little, considering that the market is still going to expand significantly, AMD stands to profit a lot here. So, what is it at this moment? It's a partnership easily valued at billions of dollars. In the end, OpenAI will have a 10% stake in AMD, and we're talking about an announcement that caused AMD's stock to rise by nearly 30%. One of the most impressive things I've seen from this investor, OpenAI announced that it will use 6 gigawatts of AMD's new Instinct GPUs. It's a multi-year plan. Obviously, it will unfold over time. It's not just 6 gigawatts out of nowhere. It's something to be acquired gradually, and it will obviously cover several generations of this hardware. Probably a version now, another next year, a new chip, an evolution of the previous one, and so on, over 2, 3, 4 years. And initially, it will be 1 gigawatt of the MI450 GPUs. And this ends up finally putting AMD at the heart, so to speak, of the narrative surrounding AI infrastructure. Because that's what AMD was missing. I've already talked quite a bit here about AMD as a company that had very good hardware, but was lacking some software and firmware to make it easy to use that hardware for artificial intelligence. It's not the easiest hardware to use. In that regard, NVIDIA is much better. However, AMD is one of the largest positions in my portfolio. It's one of those that I think has the most potential, and I could be wrong, of course, this is not financial advice, but in my portfolio, AMD is at the top. And if you want to know what my portfolio is, you want to know what my daily analyses are, here's the QR code for my Discord Primo, or here below. For $5 a month, you get access to a portfolio, my decisions, and my daily analysis of what's most important in the market. However, let's take it easy with this announcement. Why? This entire partnership is expected to begin in the summer of 2026. And while OpenAI will buy a huge amount of AMD chips, what AMD gives in return is a warrant for 160 million shares, regardless of the value of the shares. This will be unlocked gradually as all technical, commercial, revenue, and other goals are met. If all the conditions are met, if AMD delivers, if OpenAI delivers, OpenAI could acquire 10% of all of AMD. And this would, it seems, give an even more strategic dimension and, it seems, a more concrete and solid narrative. We're talking about a company that will not only buy something from another, so AMD will profit thanks to OpenAI, but OpenAI will also get a share of that very profit because it will own a part of the company. And so looking at this very quickly, we have an OpenAI that needs more chips, can't get everything from NVIDIA, because NVIDIA itself won't have the capacity to meet all the market demand in the next 2 or 3 years. Don't forget, as I've already mentioned here, it's expected that in 2 years the AI data center market will double, so NVIDIA most likely won't be able to keep up with all the needs, all the demand. NVIDIA's supply isn't enough, so AMD has a way to gain market share here. So, why is this excellent for OpenAI? Because they're spending money on chips, they'll probably get chips that are highly customized for them, but at the same time, they still keep a stake in the company. What does AMD gain from this? They gain not only a lot of money and a big boost in their stock value. AMD has no problem losing, let's say, 10% of the company if the company doubles or triples in value. And on the other hand, they firmly establish themselves in the narrative as a major supplier of AI chips. And of course, AMD is actually securing a client that, over the next few years, is expected to generate billions of euros in revenue, in addition to likely new rounds of investment. OpenAI is already the most valuable private company in the world, having surpassed SpaceX this week. What does OpenAI gain from this? Supplier diversification. And with this, it reduces its dependence on NVIDIA. And we'll get to NVIDIA in a moment because there's an important point here. It manages to strengthen its GPU computing capacity at a time when some shortages are expected. And there it is, a 10% stake in AMD. Right now it's worth a lot, and in 10 years this 10% could be worth much more. This could be an excellent deal for OpenAI, which says, you give me a bit so I can make a lot of money, you're completely focused on supplying me, and I'll give you a hand so you can become something huge. Because there is a need and some expectation that some company in the world will one day become the next NVIDIA. NVIDIA has skyrocketed in the last 2 years. Which one will be next? Out of necessity, sooner or later, one will have to emerge. Whether it will be AMD or not, no one knows. I'm betting, so to speak, on AMD, and I've talked about this here countless times. But I could be wrong. It's simply a strategy that carries its risks. Amidst all this, NVIDIA dropped by 1%, so this shows that demand is expected to be much greater than supply in the coming years, because that's how it is. It has a competitor that suddenly surged in financial availability for the coming years, but the main player doesn't fall. Why? Because everyone expects NVIDIA to stay on top and keep making more and more revenue. At most, AMD will capture a larger share of the market. At this point, we have AMD rising almost 25% in a single day after this announcement, but its direct competitor only drops 1%. This shows that the market believes there is room for both. On the other hand, and now this is the most interesting part of all this, let's not forget that just a few days earlier, NVIDIA had announced a $100 billion investment where? In OpenAI. So what do we have? We have NVIDIA investing in OpenAI and OpenAI investing in AMD. In reality, it all stays in the family. So guys, looking here at AMD's chart, what do we have here? Or at least what do I think we have here? We had an AMD that rose significantly when the AI narrative really started to take off. And when NVIDIA also started to climb, afterwards, I think AMD wasn't able to capitalize on it. It couldn't ride this AI wave. Clearly there was a winner, and that winner was NVIDIA. And so AMD, which was above 225 here, dropped and reached, just look, values as low as $76. It was around here at $100 that I started talking more about AMD, explaining that AMD had enormous potential. It was also around this time that I took the opportunity to accumulate quite a bit, and I've been accumulating since then. Meanwhile, things also started to improve on a macroeconomic level and AMD began to rise. The first deal started to appear and the scenario kept evolving. And the truth is, I was expecting AMD to stay around 170, 180, probably moving sideways with a chance to improve by the end of the year. However, this announcement completely changed my expectations. We saw a jump from about 168 to 225, so back to the previous value. Obviously, it has to balance out. I talked about this on my Primo channel, and the day after it went up 25%, it had to come down, and it did. But what's interesting is that suddenly, we started seeing funds and banks updating their estimates for this stock, and right now there are funds projecting it to reach $300. Considering we're at 211, that's quite something. Expectations are very high at the moment, and I think they could be realized because from a hardware standpoint, AMD is very good. Its CEO is an extremely competent person, one of the best out there. So Looking at the market's expectations and at what the future might hold in terms of supply and the money being channeled into these types of products that AMD and Nvidia have, these expectations are extremely high, and they have to be extremely high. Things could go wrong, AMD might not be able to deliver, it's possible, but the truth is that the web is set, the narrative is established, and finally, AMD is earning that stamp of approval in the eyes of investors. That mark of quality over the years that I was expecting would happen sooner or later, but it always takes something we can't foresee. I couldn't have foreseen that it would be on this day that an agreement would or wouldn't happen. It was expected that there would be agreements. Now with which company? At what values? Honestly, guys, I didn't expect it to be OpenAI, nor did I expect it to be at these values. This is very interesting. So the expectations are very high. The markets are going to look at this very favorably. And now, given these values, you'll have to decide what to do. And once again, guys, I don't want to influence you because I'm just here giving my opinion. I could be wrong, but what I can tell you is that I think AMD really has a lot of potential, and that's why it's one of the largest holdings in my portfolio. I hope it stays that way and continues to grow. As I told you, I'm showing you this on the XTB charts. XTB is one of the two brokers I use in my day-to-day life. It's regulated in Portugal, as I mentioned earlier, and that's very important. Go ahead and sign up. It's a safe, transparent broker, and your money, up to 20,000 euros, is protected by European laws and audits. And when you transfer money here, you receive a bonus share, an Intel share, which is also a very, very interesting company. Alright folks, the business is more or less explained. Nvidia is investing money in OpenAI, and OpenAI just completed a new investment round, becoming the most valuable private company in the world that's not publicly traded. Let's put it this way. OpenAI is going to take that money and start buying AMD in about 8, 9, or 10 months. Will AMD correct itself in the meantime? Probably. We can't forget one thing. 2 days ago, AMD was the 43rd most valuable company in the world, and overnight it jumped 11 positions. So right now it's 32nd, and Nvidia is number 1. For example, for AMD to reach the top 12, it would have to multiply its value by 3 times, and to reach Nvidia's level, it would have to multiply by 15. The difference is obviously huge because Nvidia is ahead and because Nvidia holds over 90% of the chips in the market, which is expected to double in the next 2 years. And I honestly doubt that if the market really does double in 2 years, Nvidia will maintain that 90%. Nvidia could make a lot more money because the market doubles, obviously, but keeping 90% of a market that doubles is really very complicated. There is room here. There will be demand for more than one company, for more than Nvidia. And there you go, folks. Here's a video. Thank you for your support. Don't forget about the XTB promotion. I think it makes all the difference to start like this. Thank you very much for your support. Big hug. See you next time.